Prime Minister, nothing sinister, believe that. Mike, it's word solid power. You don't call this rap. Open mind, open mic. You don't call this rap. Yo, what up, Aisha? You don't call this rap. What up, Black? It's Prime Minister Black.
Strange things are happening, strange things are happening, strange things are happening, strange things are happening.
I make the leaning tower tip a little when I spit a little with no dribble. Mind controlling the masses, not on your roof with the fiddle. Devils acting nice, get their horns in the vice. Black past the chisel, cut you down to your bone gristle. Bombing huts with missiles, a stray bullet still whistle from dead men's pistols. If roots don't got it, get down, let's go check Colonel and Giggles. Fuck the fake chalice bong and back with my weed sizzle. White perverts make African entertainers show breasts but no nipples. If lies trickle like Chinese torture, your mind stay crippled. In a state of no growth, you mind sickle. Cloning, organ snatchers, got your parts in ice or pickled. Pussies do nothing, watching black girls on the bus get nickeled. Nas got Cameron got y'all pink tickled. Sambo entertainers exiting big whips, don't get your mink riddled. Fags bite the curb and the teeth come in bits like kibbles. Reptilians get caught up when we move nets like kiddles. Sellouts major in doing nothing for their own Dr. Doolittle. A burn rainbow fake fruit flavor like Noops and Skittles.
Strange things are happening, strange things are happening, strange things are happening, strange things are happening.
Very strange things.
Just for listening to this video, you will have the chance to enter to receive a Museum of Science and Industry of Chicago package. That includes 2 adult tickets to enter. That includes 3 additional tickets for youth in your household. That includes free parking. It's a $23 value. That includes 1 special exhibition ticket up to $14 and Giant Dome Theater tickets up to $12 per person. On the 31st of October 2018, someone will be chosen for this. All you have to do is like or dislike the video. And if you share it with as many people as you can, you will get additional opportunities to win. Hello, my name is Aquila Bay, PhD, and I'm the Chairman, President, and CEO of Federation for Law and Government and its subsidiaries. Federation for Law and Government is a community and social services agency, and we will be having seminars and workshops on Moors and the future. M-O-O-R-S and the future. If you have heard of Moorish Science Temple of America, if you've been around a Moor or a Mo, then you need to come to this, because these seminars and workshops will prove to you that those who are true and divine Moors, how to obtain it and how to become great in your future.
Now, the one thing that's interesting about this is that this reminds me of MoorishDirectory.com. This reminds me of Jonathan Bay. Because you already know the new jacks, you already know the newbies are going to ride somebody's coattails in order to get on. You close your eyes, tell me if this isn't somebody jacking some Jonathan Bay. Islam to the Moorish Directory. Stay true to the foundation. And stop just following people because they have pages or whatever. Or because they say Bay, or because they say L. That means they're whatever. What type of works have they put in? You go to moorishdirectory.com. Jonathan Bey put in work, mad work, for Moors, not even for himself. Like, he doesn't have to do what he's doing. He does it because he has particular skills, and as a Moor, his skills are for the nation. So he utilizes his skills to make sure the nation has whatever it is that he's presenting based on his skills. That obviously there is a big hole, which is why he's doing the work that he's doing. Watch out for copycats out here. And and watch out for Moors that don't wear fezzes or turbans. But they're talking about their bays or whatever, and they're coming on public forum and they're talking about their Moors and do stuff for Moors, but they're not wearing a turban or fez. They don't have a flag up, nothing like that. You taking people serious? And then if they have the flags up, they got some amity banner up there talking about that means that they're American. And they have that flag in front of the Moroccan flag, which means they're American Moorish, like some jackasses. United Statesian Moorish. What do you mean you're in the United Statesian Moorish? The hell is that? Now, no Noble Drew Ali didn't bring that. I know that. But today is all about perception and self-knowledge. We're just going to jump over to African-centered consciousness versus the New World Order by Amos Wilson, their black guy, high-ranking professor, high-ranking, psychological counselor, right? Professor of psychology. He's not just a nobody. This is their guy. Perception and self-knowledge. I also see in the legacy of Marcus Garvey the legacy of self-knowledge. Teachers, wise men and women from eons past have indicated that the foundations of sanity and wisdom rest on a knowledge of self. Rest on a knowledge of self. And then we go to the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, and the first page in, Noble Drew Ali is telling you, know thyself. And then by the time you get to the back, you realize that Marcus Garvey is the forerunner of the Moorish movement. Now, did Brother Amos Wilson know that he was putting Marcus Garvey and Noble Drew Ali in the same sentence of his book that he wrote? Maybe not. But Moors with eyes wide open see through pages. And they see more that's there than just the black ink. You see more that's there. See between the lines. The legacy of Marcus Garvey has in it the legacy of self-knowledge. Knowing self. We know that at the very center of Egyptian philosophy was the admonition, know thyself. Oh, so now we go to Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, Moorish Temple of Science. First page in, says in bold letters, know thyself. And then the black guy, psychologist guy that all the black guys rep, is telling them that the very center of Egyptian philosophy is know thyself. Now, on the inside, you might not know, but Noble Drew Ali was known as the Egyptian Adam. Now, do you see why it says know thyself there? Now do you see why this has nothing to do with some Islamic, religious, whatever? Now do you see that this is about culture and about going back to ancient foremothers and forefathers? Because they spanned the globe. But no, you want to be Negroes. You want to be so Negro-ish that you're going to be a Moor, going to speak to the world, but you're not wearing your fez or your turban. And you tell me you honor your foremothers and forefathers? You really honor your foremothers and forefathers and you're not even wearing your headdress. Because, okay, because we get it. You know what I mean? Fezzes scare people. We know. People are terrified of the fez, especially our people. And that's who you're trying to reach. So no, don't wear the fez. Wear something more suitable to their whatever. Okay, I get it. But you can wear a turban. Turbans aren't scary. We wear turbans all the time. Entertainers or whoever wear turbans. Ain't nobody worry about them. They only want to take a picture of them. Oh, hey, we see you wearing a turban today. Get a picture of you. Right. There's a lot more. You got something?
I'm just listening to you tear him up right now, but I'm gonna give him a quick one to add on. Got one for you. It's called "We Are All Moors" from Anor Majid, Anour Majid. I got this book from Westfield College University. Westfield University. It's a college around here. The book is called "We Are All Moors," and in it he talks about one specific part. It says, "But let's focus on New Mexico for a moment. The capital of the state was named after the Fortress of Faith, the Castrum, founded in 1491, and built by the army on the edge of Muslim Granada before its surrender to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella in 1492. So the capital of the state was named after the Fortress of Faith, the Castrum, Castrum, which was founded in 1491. Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, right? But they're saying that this Fortress of Faith was built by the Muslims of Granada in 1491 in Mexico. Showing you again the Moorish presence here before pre-Columbian or before Columbus' time.
And showing you that that's why the center of Egyptian philosophy was know thyself. Because if Brother Yusuf didn't know himself, you wouldn't have just knew that fact right there. That he has in a book that is his own business, doesn't have to share. Could be a hoarder more and not share. But what good is that doing anybody? Why not give them the reference point? So they too can know thyself. So it's only right. It's only right that you know thyself. Why not, like, okay, for example, Islam to Brother Yasoon, Islam to Brother Cutlass, Islam to Brother Jamal McGlure. They went to the ball game last night. And we know Jam. Us and Jam go back from trying to dunk on him before he got to the NBA. And After the game, we're standing there, and these two smashed Europeans, smashed, right? They're walking, wobbling. That's how smashed they are. Walking, wobbling. I have my shades on. So I'm watching this guy and his friend pass us, and one of them is like literally elbowing the other guy to look, like, yo, look, like, look over there, like, look over there, right? So the dude, he turns and he looks, and then he started walking, and then he stops and he turns back. Remember, he's drunk or whatever, right? Are you guys Shriners? No, we're not Shriners, we're Moors. Oh, because we saw you guys on the TV or whatever, on the Jumbotron. Like, oh, really? He's like, yeah. I'm a Shriner. He's like, yeah. And then Brother Yasun's like, yeah, you know, the Moors are the ones who gave the Shriners everything that they have. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You guys have a good night now or whatever like that, goes about their business.
You got from y'all.
Quick, fast. Quick, fast.
Quick.
He already knew what was up.
That's what they be doing to see where you're at, to test the waters. We want to see what we really know.
Where are you at? This is why we tell Moors that, yeah, things might happen where you have to deal with highwayman and courts and whatever like that. But that's not what this is about. This is about experiencing the world as a Moor, not in front of some magistrate. That's not the qualification of who you are. The qualification of who you are is you knowing yourself and being that. Knowing yourself and being that. So when the Moors were themselves last night at the game, like, it's nothing but honors, right? After the thing went to the restaurant or whatever, like, we can say that, well, because she was, a waitress or whatever, she was overextending to get the tip. But, this is VIP, so tips are guaranteed. You know what I mean? And when we check other people's table that she was working with, who had VIPs on them, they weren't getting what we were getting. Right? Like NBA players from the game were eating too. And they got their food and people went about doing their waitering, whatever. But they were at our table talking and all that, having conversation. What lady wanted to put away Brother Yasun's food and all that. Yo, yeah, put your stuff in the doggy bag for you and all that, just because. Like, she just didn't do it. Right? They ain't doing that just because. Doing that because, yo, feathers up. Feathers draw stuff. Just like we said, told Yasun, yo, let's go feathers up so we can get on the Jumbotron. Sitting there, watching the game, his phone goes off. Hey! What the hell is going on right now? Why did I just see you guys on freaking the Jumbotron? What the hell is going on right now?
We put the Moors on the Jumbotron.
What the hell are you guys doing on the Jumbotron? What do you mean you're on the Jumbotron at the game? Right? So once you know thyself, right, you fall into the slot of perception and knowledge of self, not lack of knowledge of self. Right? So we're continuing on with Brother Amos Wilson. Know thyself. This is the essence of wisdom. Garvey thus recognized that a lack of knowledge and amnesia about who and what we are is pathological. We recognize today in psychology that amnesia is a pathological state of mind, that a people who suffer from a lack of knowledge of themselves and their history, a lack of knowledge of their creation, are a people who suffer from a loss of identity. Remember, we're Moors talking. We're not ancient Kemetic, Egyptian, Black, African guys talking. We're people who are on the know thyself bridge. Now, we're not off the bridge talking about what's going on the bridge and going toward knowing thyself. Because everybody who doesn't have an identity, they don't use the know thyself bridge. They're going to climb down the precipice or whatever to walk across and then climb up the as opposed to just use the bridge, because they're a dumbass.
Yeah.
They're going to run and try to pole vault over the cavern or whatever instead of use the goddamn bridge, because they're a dumbass. Why? Because they lack knowledge of self. They're not a dumbass because I'm calling them that to whatever, ridicule them. If you don't have a dumb identity, you're a dumbass. That's what the world says. That's not what Cujo says, Canaanland Moor say, or what Moor say, or whatever. That's why Noble Joali said you're not Negro, black, colored, because those are dumbasses. You know who the hell you are? It's like today. It's like today. These guys are such dumbasses. Girls today were dressing up like the guys for Halloween. Wearing skinny jeans or whatever like that.
Yeah, ready.
I was like, yo, please stop, yo, because I don't need no treats after those tricks right there.
Yep. Yep.
Because some of them I thought were dudes. Some of them I was like, hey, you don't do that. Hey, you better not do that often, huh? Because you will get girls.
Yeah.
Don't even play those ones. You better change fast when you change fast later.
They love them skinny jeans.
What, yo? That man's going nuts today.
And you can't do soldier work in skinny jeans, man.
Yo, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. You know? And look at, lack of knowledge of self is like trying to do some soldier work in skinny jeans. Doesn't work. We recognize, as Garvey recognized, that this lack of knowledge of self was deliberately induced into the mind and psyche of Black people, right? It was induced into the mind and psyche of Black people. Why? Because they're in darkness. So they're able to be induced psychologically. They're able to be played with. Because remember, he's saying that it's deliberate. So somebody's behind making Black people have this lack of knowledge of self mindset. It didn't just happen. Things were put in place so that they can have this outcome that we're seeing today, that we're recognizing that it's not about being that outcome. I'm going to die as a Moor before I suffer as a Negro.
That's right.
Forget all that. We could not be Africans and slaves at the same time. We cannot be Africans and slaves at the same time. We could not hold on to our African identity, our African selves, knowledge of our African culture, and be enslaved, the subordinates of another people. It is only when that knowledge is removed, erased, degraded, stolen, taken, and distorted that we lose our identity. It is only when that knowledge, what knowledge? The knowledge of our ancient foremothers and forefathers, which we know is passed down to us from the Moors, through the ancient Egyptians, through the Cushites, Sumerians, Phoenicians, going back to whoever it is that you want to say, because all of them were Asiatic people. And any evil or good that they did is our stuff. So stop playing. It is only when the knowledge is removed, erased, degraded, stolen, taken, and distorted that we lose our identity. It is then that an identity is placed upon us by another people, by external forces. What did Noble Jolly say about Negro black colored or whatever? Oh, those were placed on the Moors, weren't they? Oh, those were placed on the Moors. Isn't that the same thing that Dr. Amos Wilson is telling these Asiatics? That that lack of identity allows other people. Remember, this is the same abuses, mistreatments that Noble Drew always talk about in Divine Warning as well.
Yeah. Somebody was sneak studying the prophet's work.
Yeah. Somebody was sneak studying the prophet's work straight. Therefore, a lack of knowledge, a lack of self-knowledge is a lack of self-awareness. A lack of self-awareness is an insensitive. A lack of self-awareness is an insensitivity to the self. But an insensitivity in the self is also an insensitivity to reality and the outside world. Without the sensitivity of the outside world and the self, we are left to blindly stumble from one point to another. Exactly, classed as undesirables, right? When you're stumbling from one point to another blindly, and you're left that way. And keep in mind, this is Amos Wilson talking, who is these people's top Dr. Black guy for psychology. He's not a slouch. Dr. Amos Wilson is heavy to these people. He's telling them what Moor's been telling them. We're going to listen? No, because their perception is messed up because they lack knowledge of self. Because they're unconscious Moors instead of being conscious Moors. Because they think that Moor is some religion or some group that you join to be that. Ultimately, self-knowledge in its deepest sense is a knowledge of others. We cannot really get to know ourselves deeply without in essence, knowing our enemies and friends, and without ultimately knowing the Creator in whatever form or fashion. It reasons that to know the self ultimately involves moving beyond the self and seeing the world from the vantage point of universalism. The Noble Drawley says universal and all that. The Noble Drawley enforce that the Moors be open-minded and don't think that you know it all. Don't think that you have all the rubies and the jewels or whatever like that, when we could see that those are just pebbles and stones and playing around. Right? Consequently, we see in Marcus Garvey, in his efforts to rescue us from the pathology of racism, the putting of major emphasis on knowledge of self and self-knowing. We must recognize today that if we are to regain our African selves, we must then deeply engage in knowledge of self and self-knowing. You have anything to add there, Moore?
Richie, you killing him right now. My thing is, see, because I'm reading as you're going in. I'm reading the We Are All Moors.
Yeah.
And
bring it all out. Bring it all out.
it just proves even more how, you know. All right. In the book History of the Moorish Empire by S.P. Scott, 3 volumes. In volume 1, it talks about how it says idleness is a sin, saying how not studying and being like we looked at studying as the all be all of all everything. Like that was the highest of everything. Knowledge, being able to study and knowledge, knowing everything, and like being very knowledgeable was what we were about as being Moors. And like what the Grand Sheik was saying today, with the incompetence level, how nobody wants to even study. You know, they want to accept the ignorance and don't want to go read into the books and nothing like that. But it's another, that willingly and unwillingly, because a lot of them choose not to read. But some of them too, because when you're talking, it remind me, because me and my son, we build a lot. And I let him read to me the General Education Board philosophy. I wanted him to read it. So this is the 10-year-old again. He's reading it to me, and he sees how, they don't want us to read. They don't want us to be philosophers. So then at the same time, to add on to what the Grand Sheik's saying, we all went through those public schools. We were taught not to want to learn. We were taught that. I mean, for those who are in the know now, who should, or quote unquote conscious, should know that public school system did that to us and probably out here studying. But a lot of them don't know. And literally jumping through those hoops and gonna defend them. You know, like they think what they know, what the colonizer taught them in that school system is the truth.
Yeah.
When they tell you in their philosophy, we're not to make men of learning. Tells you right in it, we're not to make men of learning. So we already know that when people come in or wanting to speak about who we are and stuff like that, they're coming from a background of being taught not to learn. So they're coming off a perspective of that. So when they're teaching, they're trying to tell you something. Their background is not to be a man of learning, not to be men of, not to be philosophy or to read. All of that breaks it right down in the general. That's what they're teaching. 12 years, even when you go to college, whatever that means, you know. But that's what when they're going out doing their lectures or going out to do to help the people. If they don't have, again, back to nationality and order of the day, if they don't know who they are, it's going to be hard to listen to them because we already know their background is General Education Board philosophy. John D. Rockefeller, 1902, they started messing up the Carnegie Corporation. They family. They started manipulating the way we were going to go think in those school systems. And now people walking around thinking they know it all, but have the background of not to be a man of learning.
Yeah.
That's the hypnosis. Again, back to that, the hypnosis.
Yeah.
You know, that's the unknowing. Like, they're unknowingly going around damaging people because of their background. Their background is to be destructive, but they're not thinking that.
Right.
I yield the floor.
There's a lot more. All right. So now, perception and lack of knowledge of self. So you can see, so you already see where the Moors are at. Oh yeah, and one more thing to put out there. To show you how the Moors are on something. We'll just read this. This was all ancestors, so that the Moors who are listening could see how real it is. So we just read African-centered consciousness versus the New World Order. It reasons that to know the self ultimately involves moving beyond the self and seeing the world from the vantage point of universalism. And then I opened up Sylvester Johnson's book, African American Religions, 1500s to 2000. And this said, in the words of Ali, every nation of people should worship under their own vine and fig tree, so that by returning Christianity to its rightful European owners, so-called Negroes themselves were returning to the gods of their forebears. By advancing the particularity of religions, and by exploiting the fact that potent converts had never heard of what initially appeared to be incredible claims of ancient origins, Black Judaism and the MSTA were inverting colonial ideas about universalism, and particularly in this field of knowledge, which is the incredible claims of ancient origins. Right, to show you the uniform standard that when you're studying with multiple stuff, like we're just doing a class or whatever, right? There was no checking stuff before anything. We had more talk today. We said, yo, we should do a class later. What are you gonna do it on? I don't know, going through all these different videos, whatever. And then picked up the Amos Wilson. It was perception of lack of knowledge of self. Okay, bam, let's do that. And two different books are talking about this concept of the universalism. If it doesn't sink into you, it will. But don't wait too long. Because it's at a place right now where you better have knowledge of self and know what that is. Perception and lack of knowledge of self. In psychology, we also recognize that at the center of pathology is the individual's inability to control the self. One of the amazing things about the human mind when one looks at it from the point of view of so-called unconscious is that the individual who does not know himself and does not know reality is the individual who escapes from self-knowledge is an individual who does not know the roots and bases of his actions. Right? The roots and bases of his actions. Isn't he saying what Noble Drew Ali said, that you have a higher self and a lower self? And then the lower self is related to the base chakra. And the lower self breeds everything that you don't want in your life. But remember, this is Black Guy Psychology Guy. Oh, but he's talking about roots and bases and all that. And the Negroes, because they lack self-knowledge, they're only looking at this from the black on the page, not what's there more. If you look between the lines, if you use your higher mind, if you use your inner heart and really resonate with information. You have anything to add more? Or are you straight? I know that mute button goes.
Islam.
Islam more.
I just want to add on something real quick.
Yeah, more.
I found this interesting part in the book. We are all Moors, from again, Anor Majid.
Oh, and you could if you have some pages folded in that book, feel free to put whatever you got out there, because hearing somebody talking about we are all Moors and all that, and it's not a Moor in that sense, like how people look at it, is very, very profound. Right.
So we are all Moors. Let's spell the author's title again. It's Anor, A-N-O-U-A-R. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. A-N-O-U-A-R. Last part of his title is M-A-J-I-D, Majid. On page 63, in the chapter called New World Moors, he says, Emily Bartels, another author, explains, quote, while blackness and Mohammedanism were stereotyped as evil, Renaissance representation of the Moor were vague, varied, and inconsistent, and contradictory. As critics have established, the term Moor was used interchangeably with such similarly ambiguous terms as African, Ethiopian, Negro, and even Indian, to designate a figure from different parts of the whole of Africa or beyond, who was either black or Muslim, neither or both. To complicate the version further, the Moor was characterized alternately and sometimes simultaneously in contradictory extremes as noble or monstrous, civil or savage. And then he also quotes another author.
Hey, hold on, pull that one up again.
Read it again?
Yeah.
Okay. Emily Bartel explains, while blackness and Mohammedanism was stereotyped as evil, Renaissance representation of the Moor were vague, varied, and inconsistent and contradictory. As critics have established, the term Moor was used interchangeably with similarly ambiguous terms as African, Ethiopian, Negro, and even Indian, to designate a figure from different parts or the whole of Africa or beyond, who were either black or Muslim, neither or both. That's Emily Bartels explaining in the book We Are All Moors. And then the other author, Michael Neal, it says, Michael Neal, echoing Bartel's description, elaborates by saying that insofar as the term Moor was a term racial description, it could refer quite specifically to a Berber Arab people of part of North Africa, than rather vaguely denominated as Morocco, Mauritania, or Barbary, or it could be used to embrace the inhabitants of the whole North African littoral, or it might be to extend to refer to Africans generally, or by an even more promiscuous extension, it might be applied like Indian to almost any darker skinned peoples, even on occasion, those of the New World. In the book, We Are All Moors.
Islam.
So they know that the book is called We Are All Moors.
Yeah.
Now, let me give a story how I got that book.
Yeah, go ahead, bro.
my friend, Munir, we both coming into the knowledge and whatnot, and he's explaining to his Moabite who's in school at this time. She's the one that goes to Westfield University. She don't want nothing to do with nothing about the Moors, that Moorish stuff, whatever. She's the one that brought that book home.
Wow.
And then she gave it to him, and he showed me it. So that's how I got that book. I just wanted to give that story about that one. Islam.
Oh, speaking about that too. Just touch on that idea again about the library and you know what it means to have that, because people have stuff, you know, Moors used to have shoes to the ceiling and stuff like that. But how is books different?
Oh, okay, perfect. Especially this book. Okay, I got a perfect example for that. So this book, I let my Moabite's family use it. So I gave them the book, and this has had to be like 4 or 5 months ago. And so I've been asking for my book back. Can I get my book? Can I get my book? They didn't give me my book. So I went to the house. I know it's bad. This is how important books are. This is important. I know it's bad. I went to their house. I snuck in and looked for my book, found my book, and came back home. That's how important that book was to me. That's how important my book. I snuck in their home and got my book. I know it's wrong, but I wanted my book. It's my book. That's how important books are to Moors. I'm gonna go get my book back. Okay, no sneaker. I came by no sneaker. I needed that book. I needed that book.
Need that book.
I care about no. I snuck in their house. I know it was wrong. My Moabite don't even know about that. She don't know about it now.
He is an individual who seems to be determined by external forces of which he has little or no knowledge. He is often constantly puzzled by his own behavior. He is often a wonderment to himself. He struggles against impulses, desires, and wishes over which he has little or no control, because he has, in his escape from self-knowing and reality, conceded his self-control and given it over to someone else. In releasing his identity and permitting another to place an identity within his psyche, he has at the same time placed in the hands of that other the ability to control his behavior. He's more than saying you're Debo with the book. When Debo come around, everybody's putting their book in their book bag.
Yep.
Here comes Debo, put your book in your book bag. No reading around Debo. No reading around Debo, yo. You lose your book.
Serious. More serious about that book. Serious. Serious. I'm not playing about my book. I'm not playing. I was like, oh yeah, I need my book. I'm right in there. You know, everybody's supposed to be sitting in the living room, you know, chilling. I was like, nah, I need my book.
Found it too.
Yep. Right out. Walk right out.
Found it. That's how you. That's
right,
how you know.
Over there, collecting dust. You already know.
That's how you know the book was calling you. Like, yo, I'm not even feeling fingers right now. I'm not even feeling fingers.
So I never even. That's the only. We are all Moorish. That's the name of the book.
Yeah, that's a crazy one. That's a crazy one. You know, that is an insane one. No.
He goes crazy on it. He explaining everything about the Aztecs, because he'll break down the intermixtures with the different, you know, how Moors, we've been mixing forever. You know, he got a good breakdown on that too.
Yeah. No, even that too. Like, is there do you get your books from energy, or does like titles and covers play a more important part?
Oh, okay. Great question. I love it.
You know the question, man. You know I got the question.
Right. Because, okay, you know, we don't have time to do a lot of things. You know what I mean? We always got other things to be doing, you know? Like, so when I get my books, I'm sneaking to the store. You know, I got to go to the thrift store. So if my Moabite says, well, can you go to the store and get, you know, little something that's supposed to take 5 minutes? I'm trying to sneak to the hand-me-down store to see what books they got. And I already know, okay, you on a limit. You're supposed to be going to the store to go get something to drink. But you in the hand-me-down store trying to go through books. I don't have time to read cover to cover to see if this is the book. I literally have 5 to 8 minutes to find me 3-4 books that I need. So when I go there, I'm literally on that. So when I go there, I'm touching books. I'm literally rushing, touching books, looking at it like, yep, that's me. Yep, that's me. Yep, that's me. And I'm out. And I'm out. I get home, I be like, look at it. And it's Moors, the Moors this. That's 5 to 8 minutes. I gotta go home. And I still ain't even get the water yet. Or get the juice or whatever she wants. I still haven't even got it yet. And I'm trying to rush home. 3-4, that's all energy. I know that's the ancestors, but yep, I know he coming. So let me just put these right here. Boom, 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 boom. You come right in here, get what you need, and go home.
Wow.
I know that's the ancestors doing that. Because I don't have time. I'm sneaking. I know it. I know I can't be in the store 45 minutes to an hour picking up each book, you know, to see if this is. I don't have that time. My mom about to kill me. What was you doing? She don't want to hear that.
That's real.
That's why, you know, I know it's full. It's full energy. Yeah. It's all ancestors give you everything you need. Everything you need. And my library is crazy. And a lot of things, great. Okay, for another perfect example, my son used to do karate or whatnot at this community center down the street called the Dunbar. Look at the Dunbar is Moorish, but it's so he goes to the karate thing, and it's a community center, but they're upgrading. So you already know, upgrade means computers. So I'm coming to drop my son off every day, picking him up. I come in one day, they have all the encyclopedias, books, because they had a library in there. They had them all lined up. And the security guard, I knew him. I used to talk to him, build with him, show him little things or whatever. So I asked him, I said, yo, what they doing with them books? He said, oh, they got a guy coming to come pick them up. I looked at him, playing around. I'm the guy. He starts dying laughing, right? Because they were just going to get rid of the books. And I was just, yo, can I have those books? Y'all going to get rid of them? Can I have them? He goes, yeah. So I ended up getting 3 volume sets of Britannica encyclopedias. I have 3 volumes of those, 3 different sets for free that I got from a community center. And then but 3 volumes of them from all different types of history. And I got so many, but they were we were filling up a weed whacker, pushing it to the conveyance. We just kept filling them up with the weed whackers, the books. You know how you just spread the yeah. We kept filling them up, just pushing it to the conveyance. Like, yep. And that's how I got a lot of my books. I didn't expect that. I'm just dropping off my son. I walk in, they right there waiting for me. I'm like, oh wow, dictionaries and stuff. I got like 4 or 5 dictionaries in there. All of that. I have tons. I counted the other day. I have 32 dictionaries. Yeah. Most of them. I've never spent over $1.
That's the crazy one too, because that you always talking about that remind me of Brother Amari with that, because he was on that same one that he'll just bump into boxes of books. Like, yo, where you get the books? Yo, I just went somewhere and they're just getting rid of books. Like, what do you mean they're getting rid of books? What do you mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's not come with all types of books, whatever.
It was just there.
Yeah.
They like for my friend to come home, like I got old Bibles I've gotten from tag sales that said made with Moroccan. That's when I remember years ago, that's when I first found out, Moroccan also means leather. So inside the Bible it say made with Moroccan. It don't even say the word leather. It says Moroccan. It says made with Moroccan. I said, that's beautiful right there.
Yeah. That's that one there is wow.
Yeah, I got that from a tag sale from an old lady.
Wow.
That'd be the stuff right there. Them right there. Anytime. I don't even remember going to a store and not getting books. Now I can be at the local. I remember I was in the line waiting at the grocery store, and all of a sudden I look up and the front cover of some magazine, new discovery, ancient Egyptian artifacts found in such and such. I said, yo, I can't go nowhere without finding anything about us. Everywhere I look, it's just like boom, like yo, don't forget, don't forget. And it'd be amazing. It'd be amazing. But your library is crazy too, Grand Sheik. When you sit there and you do your live in front of your library, I try to pause it and zoom in to see what you got. That's what I be doing. I be like, yo, what's that book? What's that?
Yeah, that's one thing, yo.
But you've been on it before, coming into the knowledge. You was already reading,
The only thing we messed up is that we always mess up is that we get generous, you know what I mean? And people always take advantage of the knowledge, you know what I'm saying? Like between let's say between about 1997 and between 1997 and about 2005-06, lost crazy books because we would always put our books up for the library or whatever that we were doing if we got a space, you know what I mean? If we got a space and we said we're gonna do whatever, all right, we're putting our books, we're gonna empty our shelves at the house and put those in the library because we're gonna be at that spot most of the time. So why have the books at home? It doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? Just move all the stuff to the spot. You know what I mean? And whatever happens, and books just disappear. You know?
And it's crazy too, cause I know it's crazy. You be like, man, y'all don't even read, but my book is missing.
Yeah, like crazy. I know which book's missing. You know what I mean? But it's a good thing to do. You know what I mean? It's the same thing like with vinyl. You know what I mean? Like mad vinyl, crates of vinyl. I don't know where the hell these vinyls went. You know what I mean? Those vinyls disappeared so long ago. It's like, yo, where are these vinyls? Where'd they go? Crates. You know? It's just archives. You know, it's records. And you know, I can't remember who said the quote, but what they said, one of the greatest things you could hand down is a library. You know. Because it's really about, again, like we're saying, knowing yourself. The only way you're gonna do that is if you read something. Not knowing thyself, watching something.
No.
If you think you know thyself and you watch something, you totally have it wrong. And all that time you wasted watching, you could have read something. You know. This is for all the haters. The haters, we're not Moors and all that. Richard Brent Turner, Islam in the African American Experience. Oh yeah, before we do that, let's just let this jerky boy get a little bit of play so we could have a reason to read what we're reading.
In North America, particularly the United States of America, who classify themselves as conscious or woke, do realize that the so-called Moors, Hebrew Israelites, and whichever other black conscious organization or group is a psyop, a psychological operation to pretty much destabilize us as a people who are trying to gain self-knowledge about our history, our true roots, and our very own being.
Now, we just told you with Amos Wilson, told you guys about know thyself. So there's no way that you can put Moors in a group or organization only capacity. Because our ancient foremothers and forefathers, they weren't even dealing with that. That didn't even exist. And we're of the mind of our ancient foremothers and forefathers as Moors, Moorish Americans here today. Right? We're not religiousized Moors. We're adepts. We're seekers of knowledge. We're keepers of the light. There's no putting Moors in any type of group or organization jurisdiction at all. Like there's no jurisdiction like that that can hold Moors in it. Moors is too expansive for an organizational jurisdiction. Like people who want to say Islamic nation. They know Islamic nation. There's nothing called that. No nation called that. We know that we're Moors.
Islam, Grand Sheik.
Good, Moor.
Now, remember, there's a book called The Secret Contact with Queen Elizabeth in Islam. I think it's something like that. Yeah, The Secret History of Islam and Queen Elizabeth. And it says in that book that Islam, Mohammedanism, Muslim were terms that came up in the 15th century. The word that they would just use was Moor.
Just the common word.
Just Moor. It wasn't all that Islam, Mohammedanism, Muslim, none of that. Europeans made those terms. Muslim is a modern term. Came up in the 1500s. You can look it up. They tell you right in the dictionary.
Yeah.
It was just Moor. It was just Moor. Said it right in the book. I said, no, that's amazing. Those terms weren't even being used until the 16th century, 15th and 16th century. The term that was used was just Moor. Book said it just like that.
Which again leads to the timeline of Noble Juali's reference point of us being given these names, right? And also the banishment of the Moors. That if it's the 1500s, you have all these names popping up or whatever. Obviously, these people were about executing the papal decrees that we are going to banish the Moors, call them everything except Moors. Make sure you call them everything except Moors. You do not identify them as anything except Moors, or we will do whatever we have to do to you. That people under big threats.
That makes perfect sense. Because a lot of them like to say too, Grand Sheik, that Moor is a Greek word that simply means black, right?
Yeah.
Well, if that's the case, why are they going so hard to get away from the word Moor?
Yeah. If it just means black, just say Moors then.
Just say Moors then.
If it only means black, then what's the big deal? For a slave to retain Muslim names and traditions must have been perceived by some whites as an intolerable threat to the social order. For some white slaves had to remain the unspoken invisible other in the racial discourse. Who they were was not important. What they could signify, however, was. Therefore, some white Americans used the power of signification and characterized the Muslim slaves as overly tanned Arabs, or referred to them as Moors instead of Africans. For people of European descent, the term Moor signified their Muslim enemies wherever they encountered them in the world. You see why you have problems with these Europeans, Moors? Because you're looking at them on some, they're dealing with you how they're dealing with you because they're corrupt and they're whatever and they're whatever. But no, they're dealing with you how they're dealing with you because you're saying you're more. And you're not taking the BS anymore. You don't need them to be your master. They want to stay master. You don't need to be your master. That's your position, saying that you're more. I don't need you as master. I could handle my own self. Right? The term to European, for people of European descent, the term Moor signified their Muslim enemies wherever they conquered them in the world. Wherever they conquered them in the world. So that means Europeans know that Moors are everywhere. And how they know? Because they went everywhere to try to colonize. They went everywhere trying to colonize. Then they found out that the only way they're going to be able to do anything is if they use puppets. Because they can't do it on their own. They know white supremacy without some black supremacy in there. I think white supremacy is just some Europeans only, and they just want to get rid of all the black guys. There's black guys in the white supremacy stuff giving that energy. The hell are you talking about? Indeed, the term Moor held complex and long-standing religious political significations for European Americans. In the Middle Ages, Europe was significantly threatened by the political, military, and cultural power of the Moors from Morocco. It was not until the eve of the modern era that Spanish, Portuguese, and southern Italian Christians achieved a reconquest after centuries of domination by Muslims from Morocco. Around the same time, Russian Christians conquered the Tatar Muslims, who had ruled and or threatened them for centuries. Particularly because of the long-standing history of warfare between Christians and Muslims during the Crusades in the Holy Lands, other European people welcomed the Christian reconquest of Europe and connected it ideologically to the new voyages of discovery and exploitation in the New World. It was not until 1683, however, that the Moorish threat to Europe really ended. On September 12th of that year, Turkish Muslims finally withdrew from the outskirts of Vienna after a failed attempt to seize the city. In 1699, the Treaty of Karlowitz officially signaled the hegemony of the Habsburg Empire over the Muslim Ottoman Empire. Because of the history and conflict between Europe and North African Muslims, Europeans tended to generalize the use of their ethnic designation and then continued to name all of their Muslim enemies Moors. Although Europeans had finally surpassed global Islam in terms of technology and military power, by the time of the antebellum period in America, the image of the Moor, or the Muslim enemy, was still a powerful signification for people of European descent everywhere. It explained the awe and respect that some African Muslim slaves received from some white Americans, as well as the repeated attempts on the part of the whites to facilitate their return back to Africa in order to rid America of Islam. The back to Africa is not to take you back home. The back to Africa is to rid America of Islam.
Look at that. That's major, Green Sheik. That line right there.
Crazy. Which is why now again, with Noble Drew Ali telling the Moors, it is most earnestly hoped that the Moor Science Temple of America will not be compared to any Back to Africa movement.
That's right.
Why? As explained, the awe and respect that some African Muslim slaves received from some white Americans, as well as the repeated attempts on part of whites to facilitate their return back to Africa in order to rid America of Islam. Go back where? When you're home already. We home. You're descendants of Moroccans born in America.
That's right. I didn't know if you wanted to show that document to prove it to them. I mean, if they want to, well, if they want to say they're from Africa, well, you never left Africa. This home, if you want to look at it like that.
Oh, the
Llewellyn J. Hall and Maghreb?
Yeah. Hold on, let me get it. Yeah, okay. Maghreb. Land of the setting sun. The North African West, including the area of modern Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia.
I just always thought it was crazy, too. I mean, I know it says the land of the setting sun, but how she wrote the like it just says the North African.
Yeah.
Like that. Like that just threw me off. I'm like, the North African. Yeah. Like, what do you mean? Like like that's the prominent one right there. The North African area.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to add that just threw me. I was like, the North African. What?
Yeah.
But yeah, but the land in the setting sun.
Yeah. Well, what was the book reference again? I have the page. I just don't have the name of the book.
Oh, that's a
or a PDF.
That's two different books.
Yeah, the second one.
It was I sent it to you. It's called the Land of the Setting Sun, The Race to America.
Oh, the race for America. Okay, yeah, I see it. Okay, yeah, Toward the Setting Sun. Columbus, Cabot, Vespucci, The Race for America.
Just to prove to you.
Toward the Setting Sun, Columbus, Cabot, Vespucci, The Race for America by David Boyle.
You never left immigrant. The North African.
Yep.
You never left the land of the setting sun. If the Europeans looked at over here, going towards over here, when they left from Europe over here, the sun sets over here. That's how they looked at it. And they traveled over here. This is the land of the setting sun over here.
Yep.
The Maghreb.
The West.
So they be like, "Oh, this ain't Morocco." Right there.
Mm-hmm.
Llewellyn J. Hall. She tells you the Maghreb is the land of the setting sun, and according to European authors and back then history and now, they'll tell you, yes, America is the land of the setting sun.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the Maghreb. That's right.
This is the Maghreb.
Right there. This is the North African, right? the North Africa right here. This is what you wanted. You know, back to Africa. You ain't got to go back. You home. You home.
Home was just get conscious. So
they're hard to question some shit. Moors say that they're indigenous to North America. And then they want to argue, oh, slavery is a lie. It's a big lie because we were here first. We've been here all along, blah, blah, blah. There's no slave ships to be found. Where are the slave ships? If there were slaves that were being transported from Africa, millions of slaves, then why aren't there any cargo ships, any boats that just prove the fact that that happened, blah, blah, blah. Motherfucker, the fact that it happened is that we're here.
Okay, let's get it.
Let's get it, boy. Let's get it. Go ahead, boy. Go ahead.
I'm glad you did. Okay, let's do that one right there. Even if we go to that level right there, I think it was I forgot the Moorish title. The real traveling Moor, the one that goes to quote unquote Europe and Germany, it shows all the Blackamoor statues. Sheldon.
Yeah.
Sheldon got a beautiful breakdown on the so-called, if we're gonna go with that story about how all of the so-called West Africans that went into slavery. It shows you all of those areas where the so-called slave trade started, was where the Moors were dominating. So even if we go with his story, those were Moors that got enslaved. If we're gonna go with your story, all of those that was West Africa.
Yeah.
The Moors ran Northwest Africa.
Right.
That's what we ran. We ran that. History tells you, the Moors ran that. All of that. Okay. The empire stretched from Egypt to the Pyrenees and whatever. They tell you all of that. Yeah. All of that. But then when it comes to the slave trade and all this, they just don't want to add. They don't want to add that part because they don't know. They just getting they came from over there somewhere, but they just think the African continent. They don't know that it has 54 countries in it. They don't know none of that. They don't know none of that. And that's just on the low. On the lower, we're not even gonna break down, the real slave trade and how this is Morocco. I don't have to break down, like I was telling the Grand Sheik earlier, the word earth and Moor is synonymous in the dictionary. If you look up the word earth in a dictionary, it tells you land. The word Moor in a dictionary goes back to land. So the word Moor and earth mean the same thing. The whole world is Morocco in the dictionary. In the dictionary, the whole world is earth. Earth means land. Moor means land. What else you need? The whole world is it.
What else you need? Need more? Can't need more. And again, don't forget the slave myth of them always showing you drawings of some slave ship. How come they only have drawings? You can go see dinosaur bones at some place, and these people can't show you a slave ship. Like those pictures that they keep showing about slavery. Good one.
Now there's another one. This guy, I say who he is, quote unquote Chief X. Right. He got a breakdown on those slave ship things, right? Let me tell you, because Moors, once you put a fact up, we're gonna go fact check it. Okay. Now he breaks down where's the slave ships or whatever. Now he goes in and says how he used to work for the Navy, or he used to be in the Navy, and you can see him always working on ships, changing the ships or whatever. And his hypothesis is in using Wiki as the slave ship that they had, they turned it into so-called warships or cargo ships for food and stuff like that. So he goes on Wiki and he shows the different slave ships that they just named, and then he left it there. Now, as Moors, we go and do more research. So now I go back on there and I click on the ship specifically, and I go do background checks on these ships, the so-called slave ships and what they turned into. Some of these things weren't even ships. Some of these things, they talk about little boat things, little boat, and like it wasn't like this 100 million ship thing, and then a couple of the ships had Europeans on them.
Yeah,
dropping off Europeans first, and another one of the Moors took over the ship. Like it was a bunch of stuff. Yeah, it might have been a slave ship. They might have attempted to try to do something, and then they felt the wrath. They felt the wrath. But all you had to do was go Because that's the thing. I love when they try to show something, but they only show half the evidence. And then when you go do a little deeper research, you can just show like, oh, all of them ships that, and it's like 8 ships. It's 8 ships on Wiki. It's like 8 to 12 ships that brung over millions of Africans. I say, yo, okay. Okay,
Crazy.
8 ships. They got the 8 ships named up there too. They got their names, no pictures, no evidence or nothing.
Just the name.
I wouldn't even look personally. They had found something in 2015. They found something. They called it the ship, the name of the ship, and everything. But the evidence that they put in the museum was debris, a piece of a ship. It wasn't even a ship. They put a piece of it in there. It was like a piece of wood. Like, you know how they have like the whole side or something like that? No. Just a piece of wood they put in the museum. Talking about, that's what we found off the slave ship in 2015. See what happens when you go do some more research? So just in case they try to even throw that back in there, I already got rid of that too. I went and did the research on that. They put in pieces of wood in museums talking about this is part of a slave ship. Yeah, okay.
What the hell?
They love Grand Sheep. If you take away their myth of being on their ancestors coming on that slave ship, they be about to kill themselves, man. They be about to, like, that's all they got. Because that's all. Oh, my people struggle. That's an excuse for everything. Oh, I don't gotta do nothing. My people went to slavery for 400 years. That's like, yo, that's your favorite line for everything. We worked for 400 years. We ain't supposed to. Yeah, bro, you was enslaving Europeans by the millions. And now you want to act like you want to play. Now we playing the victim.
Yeah.
Now we playing the victim.
Yep.
Crazy. We was going around kidnapping women, children. The first booty was European daughters. That was the real booty. It was them. Their men would give up their wives or mothers, or give up their European mothers or daughters or whatever. Just give them up. That was the first booty. The first booty were European concubines. Then it came on to the gold, oh, that's treasure and all that. Nope. Originally, the booty is European concubines. That was the first booty. But we were raped and enslaved for years. What? Brother, we use booty to this day thinking it's treasure. That's European concubines. How mean is that? What do you mean? You still use these words to this day, but we start asking where's the slave ship for us and all of that. They just start showing you paintings. It's bad.
Becky. These ones in the chat. Said the Moors enslaved Becky.
The Moors said what?
Becky.
Oh.
and Becky ready for the Arab.
Yep. That's the first booty. Becky. Becky was the first booty.
Yo, are you in the chat right now? You're not in it?
No, I can't watch it. I gotta wait till after.
Jeremy just said this one. Moors run into abandoned houses. Talking about this is the molded side paddle of the first ship.
Yep. That's exactly what they're gonna do. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Oh
That's
my
what they
God.
do.
These words killing me.
Yep.
Oh, crazy. Crazy.
But and they get pashed. Look at it. You just played the video. Look how hard that man
Yeah,
going
he's
over
going
there.
hard. Yo. He starts swearing and stuff like, whoa. He's
Upset.
about
Like,
to lose it. He's about to lose it.
Yep. Yep. What do you mean they didn't come over here on no slave shit? Like, bro. Dang.
Yeah, he's going
like
nuts.
they don't put themselves with the Phoenicians, the first seafarers, none of that. They don't see themselves as that because they call themselves black. Once
you call yourself black, that's what you are. The guy wearing the briefs.
Yep.
The guy is wearing the underwear, the jockey shorts. Jockey shorts, man. He said, you came off a slave ship like that? Really? You're 6 months on a ship like that, and you're just walking like nothing happened to you? Get the hell out of here. No sores, nothing? You go 10 minutes in the shower, you see how wrinkled up you get. And you're talking about nothing happened to you? 6 months? You're in water?
And you didn't run into none of them Moors neither who run the seas? None of them?
You know what I'm saying? No, none of them. Smooth sailing from Europe, well, from Africa.
Right.
From Africa to America, smooth sailing, never bumped into anybody.
Yeah, and that's crazy too. They tell you, the Europeans, they teach us in their school, the world was flat, couldn't read or write. They went to Africa, left Africa with slaves and stuff like that, and then came all the way to America with y'all, millions of y'all. They gotta explain a lot of that.
Yeah. Don't worry. February's on the way. They could do it in February.
Right. Oh yeah. Good luck with that. I love when they do that. That's my favorite month. I love it. Get to just debunk all month. The first slaves in America were Irish, who died like fleas on the slave ship ashore. I forgot. I'm trying to quote J.A. Rogers, because he'll tell you. Came to Virginia. Those were Europeans.
That's real.
Moulay sent them too. Moulay Ismail. He sent them million slaves. Moulay Ismail did that. But I thought Morocco, we was enslaved. How? At what time was this? I think to me, the slavery is now.
Yeah, exactly. All that stuff, nothing even happened. Nothing even happened.
The slavery is now. It was the pen. The pen put us in slavery, and it messed with it gave us mental slavery. It gave us mental slavery with that pen, and we suffer with that.
Straight. Come
on, man. These people did a hologram with planes landing into buildings. You think they ain't been planning to try to give us destruction? Like, because I be thinking of everything. Because I be seeing.
Say that again in case they missed that. I think some people might have missed what you just said.
You dealing with the people who can make hieroglyphics look, or holograms. 2 planes going into a building. But now we supposed to, the painting of the ship is real. Brother, holograms into buildings. Coming down and everything, talking about the planes did it. And that's why I look at that, and then paintings and pictures too. Like, come on, man. And then they'll even put, you know, it's back to, they even put people up there to tell the story. Like, oh, yeah, my people, we went to slavery, da 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 da. You can get people to go up there for anything for a check. They'll say anything. Any and everything for a check. I'm noticing that now. And then they put it up there, making them, you see how on the news, they got fake news, they hiring actors. They hire actors immediately. Put it right on TV. How I know they wasn't hiring people to dress in those pictures, those slave pictures to take them. And now they posting them now talking about, oh, see, we went to slavery. Y'all hire actors and put them in the news now. How I know y'all wasn't doing that then?
Straight. No, you're doing that.
I question all of that stuff. All of that. Especially when I talk to my family personally and we own horses, land for miles. Land for miles we own.
Yeah.
But the slavery they talk about, we going through now. Because we lost a lot of that land now. Not back then when it was so-called you're supposed to be enslaved, you know. We're losing it now.
Yeah. Now.
We losing it now. They got majority of us in these prison systems now. That's fact. I can see that.
Yeah.
That's slavery. That's slavery. That's slavery. You can see it. Millions of us in them quote-unquote prison systems. That's the true slavery. It's happening right now. We witnessing it.
Yeah.
We witnessing it right now.
That's the truth, bro. That is the
and
truth.
then they can look, you know, and it's starting to look like what? The same Moors is free. Again, you know.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Same Moors are free again.
Yep.
The same Moors are in the chains, dragging their feet, doing the zombie style.
Yep.
You know, Michael Jackson Thriller video and all that BS. But they don't want to be Moors.
They're going to be forced. They're going to be forced to make change. They're going to be forced.
Forced already.
Oh, Trump not playing with them. If he get rid of that 14th Amendment, what the comedians say, they're going to be in a whole heap of trouble. They're going to be in a whole heap of trouble.
Whole heap of trouble.
They ain't going to know what to do.
Yep.
My mom called me, or my mother called me 7:30 this morning. I said, complaining. I told my mom, I said, Trump got y'all, because my mother, she does hair. Yeah. I said, Trump got you at your salon, everybody at your salon, you got them all uptight this morning, huh? Because you calling me 7:30 in the morning talking about, because she knows I know. You know, you going to call them more. Well, let me call my son. He going to tell me. You know, right. You know, call me 7:30. Now, what's this thing Trump trying to do? I said, yep, I know. I said, yep. I know that's what y'all over there worried about right now. I said, because he get rid of that 14th Amendment. Yeah, got y'all thinking.
They don't read that Constitution, but they know the 14th Amendment, though. They know what that is.
They know that 14th. Wait a minute, that's us right there. Yeah.
They know that 14th Amendment, bro. They start talking about 14th Amendment, birthrights being lost.
Wait a minute, 14th Amendment. My mother called me. Like,
that's
wait a minute.
crazy.
Let me call my son.
Because I know he knows what's up with this Trump stuff.
He knows what's up.
That's crazy.
That's it. It's got him nervous because my mother, she listens to us. This man over there talking about 14th Amendment, and he's a national. It's almost scary how he's doing that. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Nobuju Ali said there's no need for the 14th Amendment. Nobuju Ali said we had a nationality. You know what I mean? I'm looking at this European. I'm like, yo, why are you talking like that?
Yeah. Why you give up more? Give up more. Like, why are you holding back? Stop playing with these people. You know what I mean? Stop playing with them. Let them know what's up.
Because you saying a lot of things that sound familiar. You sound real familiar.
Yeah, sound like he's studying something. Somebody sent him. So he actually took one of them writ serious that he got. Let me actually read this thing. These Moors sending me stuff or whatever.
They're coming in so much. Let me see what it is. Let me see. I can see it right there. Let me see that.
Oh, they're actually constitutional.
Ooh.
I thought this was some sovereign citizen, whatever.
Yep.
Henry, get Air Force One.
These people talking about they got a nationality. Trump went right over there and told them, I got it. I'm a nationalist.
I'm a nationalist.
Right.
I've been getting your writs. Wink, wink, wink. Nudge, nudge,
wink,
nudge.
Wink.
Wink, wink, wink.
Yep. Because I don't know how many presidents they done had. How many? I don't know how many they do in there, whatever. I never kept count. But I tell you this, I ain't never heard none of them say that. Never.
Yeah.
Never none of them say that. Never. Talking about national. You can't even say that word. You can't national. That's that.
Yeah, that's like the M word.
Yeah, right. When they, nationalize. You can't. What? Nationalize what? No.
Yeah.
And he up there got him nervous right now. Trump got him nervous right now. So that's right. He gonna force you to make change. He gonna force y'all. Like, oh, okay, y'all want to keep me ignorant? I got something for you. I got something for you. I'm gonna take away everything. Everything. Everything.
Jeremy said, I haven't heard anybody use the word birthright but Moors.
Right. 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 That's the other thing too. I be listening to a lot of why he said that.
Why? I'm like, how do you say birthright? I'm like, what do you mean you said birthright? What do you mean you said birthright? Am I tripping right now? I'm like, no, I'm not tripping. I'm like, I'm not tripping. I'm not tripping. I'm just gonna pretend I didn't hear anything. Let's see who talks about it.
That's Moorish. Anything birthright is Moorish.
Yo, just like the Nas album. I'm not gonna say anything. I'm not gonna say anything. Let's just see what happens.
Yep.
Because people are getting tested right now, and they're proving their blindness.
Yep.
They're proving their blindness.
Trump over there, and that's the thing too. That's what they need to talk. They don't want to talk about that because soon as the so-called conscious community bring up Trump over there talking about taking away the 14th Amendment and talking about he a nationalist, it comes back to the Moors. They will never talk about that. They don't want to talk about that. They bring up everything else. Trump this, Trump that. But when it comes to what he said and how it is, once he take away that 14, which is already, we know it's unconstitutional. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's already not there. Moors already know that. That's why they treating them the way they've been getting treated. They getting murdered and everything. We already know. You know? But for him to, that's why, again, for him to say it, it's like, wow. And then you're going to say it? Like, okay, y'all think y'all safe with it because y'all don't read. So since y'all don't read, I'm going to tell you, I'm just going to take it away. I'm just gonna since y'all don't read, how about this? I'm just gonna tell you I'm taking it away. Since y'all think it's real. Yeah. Well, let's take y'all.
Let's take away what's not real.
Let's take that away from you. Now that's how
I'm gonna take away your invisible friend.
Right. Yeah. It's sad, man. It's sad. That's sad.
I'm gonna take away your invisible friend. Now you don't have a friend to play with.
Now you don't have a friend.
And you're mad. And you mad.
And you mad. Trump took away your invisible friend. Look at him. He's on the roll. It took it away and told you, I'm a nationalist.
Yep.
Took it away and told
Playing these people, yo. Playing these people hard.
I'm a nationalist.
Hard.
That's why I took it away.
Yep.
That's why I took it away. Hey, I have a nationality. You ain't got a nationality? Hey, that's your fault.
Exactly.
That's your fault.
Right, and again too, right? When they talk about Brother Sancho was talking about, you know, speaking of birthright, what's birthright citizenship?
Right.
Because the thing is so dead, they're throwing in all this type of stuff or whatever. Negroes getting riled up or whatever for some stuff that doesn't even exist.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff that wasn't even ratified.
Doesn't even exist. They over there about to go crazy over that. Doesn't even exist. Oh yeah, now you gotta look at that. You mad, and now you mad, getting upset, angry, about to picket and march over something that doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
Doesn't even exist. And that's not even hard. You know how you gotta, we gotta break down a little bit of stuff to prove that this is Morocco.
Yeah.
You ain't gotta do that with that.
Right.
All you had to do was read a little bit.
A little bit.
14th Amendment was made under the Commerce Act.
Nothing extensive. No.
You ain't had to do nothing crazy, investigation, nothing. You go, that's in encyclopedias, that's on the internet, they don't hide that. If you ask a librarian, I'm pretty sure it should tell you. The librarian will tell you, oh yeah, the 14th Amendment was never fully ratified. She'll tell you just like that. My librarians are cool. I love them. I be having them working hard.
Yeah, Moor. Seems like justice was done.
Oh yeah, we can talk about telling them too how there's not a lot left. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
there's not a lot. There's not. We always have that blockage too. Like, there's nobody left. You know, we're running out of dirty Moors to beat up. You know, because everybody really knows, man.
Yeah.
Nationality is the order of the day.
Right. It's not some club. Everybody knows. People are getting hip to the game. You know what I mean? They're not playing around with these tricksters anymore. Somebody said that there was an official count. It was like 3-point-something million that Polite got from the conscious community or the black community or whatever. 3-point-something million. After they checked up, because they put up a thing, so everybody who got played could go up there and put how much he played them over or whatever. And that's how much it was.
That's crazy, man.
Crazy. You know what I mean?
That's crazy. And he spent it all. He's back.
Oh, he's back. Money's done. So you gotta re-up, right?
Yep.
You gotta re-up.
Oh, you messed your money up. Yep. Nah, I can't re-up. He's back. He's back.
And he's dropping etymology now.
Oh yeah.
And you know what I mean? Change up his, his stuff. But peace to Brother Hassan Kalba, who've been eating them all up. Peace to Brother Hassan. Who've been eating them.
Oh, Hassan's been killing them.
Killing them. That's the good reality show right there.
Yep. Oh, you mean not Polite? What's his real title? Cavity. Cavity's back.
Cavity with the tranny and the drop top.
Yep. Talking about that's the hood. He don't need the hood. He's back in the hood.
Same people he didn't give a shit about. Yeah, Moor. They're saying about 3.4 million. It's crazy. Something like that.
Crazy.
Something like that.
3.4 million. I mean, when you're taking trips to Dubai,
you know what I mean?
That's gonna cost you $1 million right there.
It's wonders you could do with a dead person's social insurance number.
Oh yeah.
Wonders. You could have the world. Yeah. But yeah, more Islam chat Moors. Peace and love to all the onliners. Don't forget, January 5th, Noble Drew Ali Day, Canaanland, 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. Noble Drew Ali Day, January 5th, 29 St. Denis. 29 St. Denis Drive. Anybody's looking to vend, if you're on a vend, you could reach out to canaanlandguide at gmail.com. Canaanland, Guide at gmail.com. Islam to all the Canaanland Moors. Islam to all the Moors worldwide. Peace and love to all. Peace and love to all. Islam.
Prime Minister, nothing sinister, believe that. This word solve power. Don't call this rap. Open mind, open mic. You don't call this rap. What up, Aisha? You don't call this rap. What up, Black? It's Prime Minister Black.
Strange things are happening, strange things are happening, strange things are happening,
Call to ash, Islam.
Strange things are happening.
I make the leaning tower tip a little when I spit a little with no dribble. Mind controlling the masses, not on your roof with the fiddle. Devils acting nice, get their horns in a vice. Black past the chisel, cut you down till your bone bristle. Bombing huts with missiles, a stray bullet still whistle from dead men's pistols. If roots don't got it, get down, let's go check Colonel and giggles. Fuck the fake chalice bonging backwards, my weed sizzle. White perverts make African entertainers show breasts but no nipples. If lies trickle like Chinese torture, your mind stay crippled. In a state of no growth, you mind sickle. Cloning, organ snatchers, got your parts in ice or pickled. Pussies do nothing, watching black girls on the bus get nickel. Nas got camera, not Cameron, got your pink tickled. Sambo entertainers exiting big whips, don't get your mink riddled. Fags bite the curb and the teeth come in bits like kibbles. Reptilians get caught up when we move nets like kiddles. Sellouts, major in doing nothing for their own Dr. Doolittle. A burn rainbow, fake food flavor like Luke's Skittles.
Strange things are happening, strange things are happening, strange things are happening, strange things are happening.
Yeah, we did. For sure, man. All right. Peace, bro.